Baby boomers are rapidly becoming homeless.
The population of homeless baby boomers is growing fast.
Baby boomers are rapidly becoming homeless, and this is going to have significant implications on society. Why are so many baby boomers rapidly becoming homeless? And what are going to be some of the things that happen to them as a result of this demographic rapidly becoming homeless and not being able to provide for themselves? Watch to the end of the video to find out what the consequences of poor planning is going to now lead to for the boomers and how an influx of homeless boomers will impact society. And let's just go ahead and jump right into the video.
It's only going to get worse. A study from the University of Pennsylvania finds more people 50 and older are on the streets. The executive director of the Bishop Dudley Hospitality House is noticing the trend and is asking for your help. On tonight's Eye on Kettlland, Brady Mallory introduces you to two baby boomers who didn't expect their lives to turn out this way.
All over Sioux Falls, you may see any number of people who are homeless. Have you ever asked yourself, what happened and why?
I'm unable to afford my medications.
When 51-year-old Theda Hernandez moved here in the late 90s, she had two jobs. Eventually, she found herself out of work. Rent was too high, medications were too expensive, and finding assistance wasn't as easy as it seemed. She eventually found herself living on the streets.
Rough. I mean, it's like, it's cold. There's been friends that I've lost.
Hernandez's story is becoming more common for baby boomers over the age of 50.
When you're living on a fixed income, whether you have disability or Social Security, there is no way to make more money.
Bishop Dudley Hospitality House Executive Director Madeline Shields says she's seeing more guests here who are over 50 and homeless. As the trend increases, she says help doesn't seem to be keeping up because most services, like affordable housing programs, are geared toward children and families. That leaves boomers out in the cold.
It's very concerning. We need more affordable housing. We need more income-based housing.
Shields says it then becomes a matter of having to choose between rent, medications, or food.
And it's not like rent is ever going to go down, and prescription drugs are never going to be cheaper.
They get behind on their bills. One thing leads to another, and eventually they're homeless.
These are real problems for people that they just cannot get out of.
Marianne Heeb agrees and says when she's looked for a job, she instead found discrimination.
We're stereotyped because of our age, which it also makes it hard to find even a part-time job because the younger generation doesn't think that people above 50 are worth anything.
Now, guys, you know what's interesting? As you can see, this video is actually a couple years old. And you have baby boomers who are in their 50s that were rapidly ending up homeless. They are still rapidly ending up homeless. And look at their attitudes. Oh, it's discrimination. They don't care about people above 50. Guys, it's the boomer population has been rapidly ending up homeless for years now. They're the largest growing group of homeless people in the United States, and the problem has only accelerated since the events of 2020. Now, notice the difference between baby boomers and between Gen Xers. Gen Xers at 50 are moving along. Gen Xers at 50 are changing careers. Gen Xers at 50 are not complaining. You know the reason why? Because they are built for survival. You know who the boomers sound like? They sound just like Gen Zers, complaining. And it's funny because, people often say, oh, I've seen even some Gen Xers that try to say, oh, the boomers had hard lives. No, they didn't. They lied. Okay, if you go back and you listen very carefully, boomers had the greatest lives. Not every boomer had a perfect life, but most of them, as a generation, they had very, very easy lives. After WW2 ended, starting in 1946, which was the beginning of the baby boom, the center of the United States, the center of the family, the center of society were the boomers. It was entirely focused on the boomers, and it was all about the future of their kids. And it was like, the boomers had to get everything that they wanted. They were getting more things than even celebrity children were getting, because it was all about, oh my gosh, my little girl, the little girl across the street got an Easy Bake Oven, and a dollhouse. So my kid needs an easy bake oven and a dollhouse. Oh, the kid across the street, their son, they got BB, BB guns. So my son needs a BBGUN. All right. Oh, this kid got, their kid got a car. My kid needs a car. This is exactly how it happened. And they grew up very, very privileged. They were the center of the middle class family. It was all about their future, all about them, 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 them. Jobs were created for these people because a lot of them were not very qualified for work. There were a lot of people in their generation who were not very bright. We saw that with some people in their generation. For example, George W. I'm not going to mention, which one I'm talking about. There were people like that. I'm not panning on them, but there were a lot of people who were just not very bright, and jobs were actually created for these people to just literally move paper, stamp sheets and move paper from one box to another, and then put it into archive, like in a room where no one ever looks at it. And that was like their entire jobs, like just literal jobs that had no real purpose and were not necessary, were created for the boomers. So they were a very privileged generation. They'll lie about it. And when I've spoken to boomers in the past, like sometimes I'll get a boomer who sends me an email and they're like, you're saying all of these things about us, like, but I didn't use drugs. I didn't smoke pot. I worked hard. I built myself up, and I did all of, I saved for retirement. And I said, oh yeah, how about your peers? A lot of your peers aren't looking so good right now, are they? And their response is always, yeah, you got me there. Anyway, have a good day, man. And they end it immediately, because even though there are a few decent people in that generation, the vast majority of them were bad. They were like Gen Zers. They were just like the bad muffins. They were very narcissistic. The center of their lives was consumerism. And they were told by their parents, do not depend on Social Security. Save for retirement. And many baby boomers did not save for retirement. While a lot of them plundered society, you could see right now that a lot of them are desperate for Social Security. And they're saying that they cannot survive without Social Security. Social Security, depending on who you are, may or may not be a decent amount of money. A lot of them will be receiving checks for maybe $1,000, $2,000 a month, $1,500, $2,000 a month. Many of them are not receiving large checks, and they're going to try to live off that money. With rising cost of living, they can't live off that, and the state is not going to be adjusting it significantly, because we're going to run out of Social Security, in the early 2030s entirely. Like the entirety of Social Security is going to run out in the early 2030s, and then from there, they'll be paying just based using payroll taxes. And as fewer people are working and dropping out of the economy, that's less money. So, at that point, they'll be receiving between 70 and 77% of what they would be getting now. So that's a big drop. But then you have to understand that fewer and fewer people are working. There are fewer and fewer part-time jobs, and the amount of payroll income is going down. The amount of payroll taxes is going down, especially because men are dropping out of society and dropping out of the labor market. I'm not going to play the labor market videos for you, but they keep on saying that 7 million men are out of work. It's more like 30 million. It's more like 30 million men, or a little over 30 million. And these men are not working. Men pay 80% of all men pay 80% of all taxes. Women make 80% of all consumer purchases. So men are not spending money anymore. They're not creating homes. They're not creating families. They're not supplementing the living of women, and they're not putting, and that tax revenue that's not going into society, it's not going to be there to supplement the income for boomers. So realistically, when Social Security runs out, they may be seeing somewhere between 60 and 65% of what they would be getting now, if they're lucky. They can't live off that. And inflation only continues to go higher and higher and higher. Even boomers who may have $500,000 saved for retirement, that's not going to take care of them. If you're 65 years old, the last of the boomers turned 65 in 2029, I believe. 2029, the last of the boomers turned 65. And then take into consideration, at age 67, they can file for full benefits. So at age 67, the boomers can get full Social Security benefits. And the last of the boomers turns 65. 65 in 2029. But keep in mind, to my understanding, they can also start collecting Social Security at 62. Many of them know exactly what's happening right now, that things are going to hell. So a lot of them are going to start collecting Social Security at 62. All right? Because many of them are going to be in desperation mode. And then those that wait till 67, they're going to collect full Social Security benefits. So they're going to be pulling out even more. So the government is going to have to do a number of things, and a lot of that includes, giving reduced amounts. There's no way they can live off that. I mean, they couldn't live off it in the first place, but Social Security is going to be just a joke. And they're going to be crying about Medicaid and not being able to buy their, afford all of their medicines because they're sick. They're sick. The boomers are not well. They've lived very, they ate the Haagen-Dazs. They couldn't keep their hands off the Haagen-Dazs. They gained a lot of weight. Many of them were not focused on staying in shape. And these are bad habits that started in their 30s. George Carlin talked about it. The boomers just basically refused to be realistic. Compare that to Gen X. Gen X is like aging like Benjamin Button. The reason why is because they have to stay active. They have to stay grinding. They have to keep on moving. And that's what keeps them young. The boomers, on the other hand, they clocked out a long time ago. They began living easy lives a long time ago. And because of that, they began aging rapidly. And many of them, their minds are going to start falling into disarray because of, as a result of dementia. Because if you don't use it, you lose it. There were studies that found that, and I studied this when I was in university, that boomers were likely going to have significantly higher rates of Alzheimer's than previous generations. And then they said that, oh, well, it's changing now. Maybe the research is pointing in a different direction. Yeah, I don't think so. We're going to see a lot of boomers developing dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's not going to be, and it's going to put a massive burden on society because no one's going to be there to care for them. What's the outcome of all of this? The outcome is that you're going to find a lot of baby boomers homeless, living in destitution, attempting to stay in shelters, living in their cars, and you're not going to have a society that's able to care for them. The young people in society, Gen Zers, they're just like the boomers. You can see they're aging rapidly, absolutely rapidly. You see, there's a Gen Z, you're like, oh, they're 24. Bro looks a good 40-something years old. And it's every single one of them. There's the saying, God will give them over to their sins. And you can see, people, if you live an easy life, then you're going to have, if you start off life on easy mode, you're going to often end life on hard mode. So, at the beginning of your life and the early part of your life, you'll be living a life on easy mode. But guess what? As you approach middle age and old age, it's increasingly going to become hard mode. It's going to be hard mode. And boomers are going to find themselves living life on hard mode. What's more interesting is that they pillaged the economy and they made life so difficult for everyone else that millennials could not help them even if they wanted to. Millennials are going to have to spend the next 20 to 30 years trying to dig themselves out of debt and everything else. Okay, and that's the same for a lot of Gen Xers. The good thing with Gen Xers is many Gen Xers know that it's a hard knock life. Would they like to get the Social Security, get what they paid into Social Security? Sure. Well, they damn well know they're not going to. They know they're not going to, most of them. And they're just going to have to shrug their shoulders and move on. Just like, because that's how it is. They know that life is not fair and the world is corrupt. All of this whole damn thing is very, very flimsy. So we have our answer. The future for baby boomers who are rapidly becoming homeless is destitution. Many of them are going to face extraordinary poverty, extraordinary destitution. They're going to be homeless, and they're going to find that there's not going to be a lot of help on the way for them. That's the sad and honest to goodness truth. And many Zoomers, Gen Zers, that's their future as well, but they're going to experience it much sooner than the boomers. Like I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that, the future for Gen Z, I'm talking about 5 to 10 years, where you're going to start, it's already beginning to happen now. Many of them are going to become thieves and squatters. because they're not going to be able to survive without their parents. And those that can't live off their parents, or even some that are living with their parents, they're going to start stealing. And when they don't want to live with their parents anymore, or they cannot live with their parents anymore, they're going to start squatting. They're going to become thieves and squatters. And there's something that's corrupt about Gen Z. Like, they have no sense of real morality. So the idea of stealing is very normal to them. Like 44% of Gen Zers have admitted that they are stealing from credit card companies, where they're stealing from businesses where they'll purchase something and then call the credit card company and say that they never got it, and they're not afraid of committing this kind of fraud. You know, it's a serious problem. It's a serious problem, and they don't care. Many of them show up for work and then they just leave, and they don't tell anyone that they're leaving. And as a result, you have people that they work with that are furious, and they're now beginning to just like tell them off, like just curse them out, like, on behalf of everyone, on behalf of all your coworkers that you've done this to, we have a message for you guys. And people are beginning to lash out at Gen Z over what they're doing. And the boomers are just like Gen Z.
I think most of us in the workforce have a bone to pick with Gen Z. This app, and several others, where it's Instagram, YouTube, whatever, is full of people posting videos of them just leaving in the middle of the shift without telling anyone, or just saying, well, I'm just never going to show up to work again. I don't like it. On behalf of all of your coworkers, get fucked.
Guys, there you go. There you go. And of course, boomers will say, that's not us. We worked hard. We give us what we deserve. What you don't like, old people, bro, you guys control most of the wealth in Western society. And now you're demanding even more. Where are you going to get it from? The millennials, they're broke. Gen Z, they're crooks. Gen X, mess around, find out. Mess around, find out. Like, they've basically walled themselves off into a corner. They're going to be at the mercy of the old wealthy boomers. Guys, this was a comment I received from one guy, Deep Science. He says, I, as a boomer, woke up in a country that threw its factories overseas to China, Japan, India, Singapore. Here I am saying I need to feed myself and no work to work. If there were any jobs that paid a living wage, they were given to the military veterans, and even today a $6,000 hiring incentive is received by corporations when they hire veterans. Now the U.S. is complaining that there are jobs and we are not applying. The U.S. has not kept up with wage-adjusted inflation. The U.S. leads the world in this fact. The country of France has been the only one that has raised wages to adjust for inflation. I have starved in my home country, the great U.S. of A. I mean, there you go. There you guys go. These people lived life on easy mode, and now it's catching up to them. And what are they doing? They're blaming society. They'll blame other generations. They're the ones who still hold the majority of all wealth while mocking everyone else. But then they're ending up broke and saying that society doesn't care about old people. Like, bro, you're the ones who live these lives. You're the ones who created this mess. And you know what they'll do? They'll turn around and blame their parents. They'll blame their parents. And there's a lot of boomers saying that, the other generations need to take responsibility for society now. Take responsibility? The same people who created the mess and don't want to be accountable for it are now trying to shift blame to others. Guys, you know what that is? That is slavery. Okay? I don't feel bad for these people at all. The future for them is homelessness, destitution, and poverty and extraordinary hardship because they did not plan ahead for the future. They lived life on easy mode, and now they're going to end life on hard mode. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying the content, subscribe to our newsletter for my personal thoughts, insights, and a free copy of my ebook, The Blueprint for Escaping the Rat Race. Click the link in the description to get your free copy. What do you guys think regarding all of this? Baby boomers are rapidly becoming homeless. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA Men walking away, and cheers.